Good evening. Here in the second part of this presentation, I would like to tell you at least the basics, following appadurai himself, of what he means by these 5 mental landscape. Okay, the first one is the ethnoscape. Allora, the ethnoscape is landscape of persons that constitute the shifting world in which we live. Evidently, this means the ethnoscape has to do, let's say, with our nationality, sometimes our ethnicity, but also, let's say, our nationality. What is the important point? The important point that is making, as the international capital shifts its needs, production and technology generate different needs, nation-states shift their policies on everybody, including refugee population. These moving groups can never afford to let their imagination rest too long, even if they wish to. What does it mean? It means that some groups may continue to have the same kind of ethnoscape relatively stable. Why? Because the political community that they belong to is stronger. Other groups, they have to change it very, very often. Per esempio, if you're Americans, most likely, as you're coming from, for your luck, a stable, strong state, you don't change your ethnoscape as much as, let's say, a Malian refugee that has to go through Libya and then to Italy and then God knows where has to do. Okay? Second, technoscape. I think this is probably something that we are all very familiar to, is the global configuration of technology and the fact that technology moves so fast. So evidently, also our mental landscape, as it has to do with technology, it is extremely important, okay? Poi we may also see financescapes. What are financescapes? Financescape is the way that global capital functions. And evidently, either as individual or as groups, we have to think of us on the basis of these financescapes. Also very interesting for our discussion are mediascapes and ideoscapes. What does it mean? Mediascapes refer to the distribution of the capabilities of disseminating information, like, for example, newspaper, magazine, television station, film production studios. E vedete, these mediascapes, they're also very important for us, perché just think of yourself when you were in Italy. I don't think that you were actually trying to follow, let's say, Italian news, but definitely your mediascape, your informations were still the mediascapes that you had in the USA. Vedete, this particular situation whereby you may be in one part of the world and at the same time your mediascape may be somewhere else is all the more special in a globalized world. E vedete also what is very important is that those mediascape, they create imaginary world. All right? Per esempio, let me tell you, I sometimes, I see how in my travels around the world, I've seen, like, for example, the mediascape of hip-hop culture, way of dressing, etc., influences groups that are very, very far away from large American cities, or also, group that, for their ethnoscape, have nothing to do with this kind of mediascape. But let's say, for example, I've seen young kids of, big metropolitan areas in India dressing up as, hip-hop. And why? Because they feel some kind of an affinity for some reason. Quindi, vedete, mediascape, tend to be image-centered, narrative-based accounts of strips of reality. And, the strips of reality may be, let's say, appropriate by different groups. Also, see what appadurai writes here. Many audiences around the world experience the media themselves as a complicated and interconnected repertoire of print, celluloid, electronic screens and billboards. The lines between the realistic and fictional landscape they see are blurred. So the further away the audience can be from the actual source, the more likely they are to construct imagined worlds that are chimerical, aesthetic, even fantastic objects. I have seen, for example, some communities here in Italy thinking that they are Americans. For example, there is a very strong trend among Filipinos here in Italy to think of themselves as Americans, but their Americanness is based upon a mediascape that evidently is chimeric. What does it mean? It's a dream. But you see, those dreams become important insofar as they orient behavior and also as long as they orient self-understanding. So at the end of the day, even identity. Quindi vedete, they are like, I think it's interesting this word that appadurai uses, they're like scripts. And they help to constitute narratives of the self, but at the same time also narrative of the other. Think, for example, how our media construct the other. Think, for example, whom do you think of a group that is so remote, so distinct, so far away, and perhaps even scary? In many cases, let me say, I know that in many cases, this other with the capital O, for example, are the Muslims. Think of how much our perception of Muslim is determined by mediascape. Okay? Quindi vedete, mediascape are all these informations that we are available, but those information can also be a movie, all right? Can be a song, can be a video, a lot of, what we find on our cell phones. And they influence, let's say, our dream, how we see somehow a dream world. Now, let me also tell you what are ideoscapes. Also, ideoscapes are made by images, but those images are directly political. And where do we as individual or as groups, we get those concatenation of images? We can take them, for example, either from our states, from the state that we live in. So, for example, you can say you're getting your ideoscapes, let's say from the fact of you are an American, all right? But sometimes those ideoscapes, you can also take them from movements. Per esempio, sometimes you have some kind of, counterculture movements. Say, for example, very, very strict fundamentalist religious movements. Okay, they will have an ideoscape that has nothing to do with the ideoscape of the state in which these people are physically living in. Now, what is also very important is a term that appadurai is using here. And this term is diaspora. I think in American English you pronounce it diaspora, but in fact, it comes from Greek and means being spread around. What does it mean, diaspora? Allora, vedete, you see, here I would like you to remember this term because it is very important. Today, in this globalized world, we speak of diasporic identities. What does it mean? It means of identities that are all spread all over the world. The term diaspora, as some of you may know, who knows it? Yes, you're right. It comes actually from Jewish history because in general we use the term diaspora to mean when after the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AD, a lot of Jews had to leave Palestine, that was at the time, as everybody knows, under the Roman Empire. They started spreading all over, diaspora, all over the Roman Empire. Okay, this diaspora has become like the model of a lot of diasporas. Quindi vedete, today in our globalized world, we speak of diasporic identity. That means of, identities that are the result of a diaspora. So, for example, what can be a typical diasporic identity? Okay, to a certain extent, think of Italian Americans, Italo-Americans as they were called. This is a diasporic identity. The important points that we need to retain from among the many, okay? But also, one of the very important points that we need to retain from this reading of appadurai is, in fact, this one, that in a world that is more and more made of different diasporic identity, we may have an ethnoscape, and let's say an idioscape, but then we may have a completely different mediascape, or let's say our mediascape not necessarily corresponds to the, say, idioscape in which we are in. But also very often, also think of financescape. The financescape, as we said, means the general overall, how can I say, economic condition of this globalized capital that we are all a part of. Sure, I can have a certain mediascape, meaning a certain concatenation of images on how the economy works that not necessarily correspond to that particular sector of financescape in which I find myself to live. So I would say the important word is concatenation, because it shows how can I say, different images link each other, and also, once again, the key word is diaspora. Diasporic identity, and how this diasporic identity may work in a very different way, those different mental landscape. And even more, the fact that those mental landscape may not be objective, okay? But they are important insofar as they construct imagination, and in turn, imagination constructs identity. Thank you very much. I hope, I have managed to give you at least some elements to navigate this, I would say, fascinating reading, okay? E niente, I look forward to discussing it in our next live session on Wednesday. Thank you.